With hard efforts and consistency, you can make possible which seems to be impossible in the beginning. And this kind of example is set by Dr. Pradeep Dubal, who has got All India rank 648 in UPSC Civil Service Examination 2019. And in today's video, we will be having a candid conversation with Dr. Pradeep Dubal, who will be explaining us his entire journey, his strategy, and his experience in this civil service examination. So, without wasting any time and without any kind of formalities, let us start this discussion. And yes, before going further, just subscribe this channel and click on bell icon so that you will get notification of all the coming videos.
So
Okay,
we can
thank you.
start with our discussion. Sir, you have
Yes.
achieved All India rank 648 in this UPSC exam, and we can understand it is a very tough journey and very this is it is considered a very tough exam in the world, the UPSC Civil Service
Yes.
exam. Sir, what motivated you, and at what stage of your life you believed that you should start preparing for civil service exam?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to clarify some of your statements in the beginning of question.
Okay, sir.
That it
Okay.
is a toughest examination in the world. Of course, it is considered as one of the toughest, not one of the toughest, but it is the toughest examination in the world, followed by IIT Joint Entrance Examination.
Yes, sir.
And this toughness or this terminology, the toughest exam, is based on the number of aspirants uh, applying for the examination vis-a-vis number of candidates being selected. So near about 7 to 8 lakh people appear for this examination and about 1000 or less than 1000 students get selected. So the percentage of students getting selected is very, 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 very low. And
Yes,
on
sir.
that basis, it is considered as world's toughest examination. But uh, I'm not sure about whether it is actually so tough because there are many other examinations in the curricula of various universities and all, where people face the problem of failure more than UPSC examination, but their selection rate or the passing rate is more, and that's why they are not at the list. But yes, we do not necessarily need to be a bit afraid of this examination just because it is tough. Second thing, when I was a student, school student, I was not having any idea of civil services, what are civil services, how a person becomes IAS officer, or how a person becomes IPS officer, or a government servant, any kind of government servant. I was not having any idea. The only government servant I had seen in my life was a medical officer who used to come to our school when I was studying as a student in Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya Pulus, and he used to come for medical examination of students. And at that time, we were very impressed with that kind of personality. But I was not having any idea about what is IAS, what is IPS, and all. Then when I started to prepare for my engineering entrance after my 11th and 12th, or when I was in 11th and 12th, even then also I had a dream of becoming an engineer. So at that time also, I did not have any idea, but somehow a different route was adopted by me, and I became a doctor. I was studying in MBBS,
Okay.
and after MBBS, when I was working as a medical officer for some days in Palasdev in Taluka Indapur of Pune district,
Yes, sir.
and then when I was in Sassoon Hospital as a resident doctor, at that time uh, I came in contact with some of the officers working in government setup or government services, and those were of my age. Those were of hardly 1 year elder to me, or even of my age, and some even younger than me. And that time, I thought that I should give it a try. I should prepare for civil services, and I should try for these services. If at all I'm going to be in government services as a medical officer, then why not to go for a job which is the best job in the government sector. So I started to prepare for UPSC examinations in 2014 after about 2 years of my service as a government medical officer or a resident doctor. Then I started to prepare for civil services examination, and then the journey began, and
Okay.
it
Okay.
has come to the end today.
Yes. Yes. Sir, you just talked about your school education in Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya. And what was the role of that institution? Because Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya is one of the most reputed institutions in the nation. and the curriculum, the syllabus, the teaching quality, the staff, and the facilities we get here, they are very good. So, what was the role of Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas in development of your character, development of your personality, and everything?
I think the basic foundations. We have heard a kind of a statement or a sentence in childhood that children are like wet cement, and whatever falls on them makes an impression.
Yes,
So this is literally true, and that foundation of the character of a human being is laid down usually in school days. And Navodaya school was important in that sense. It helped to build a strong foundation, and it was a complete school in true sense, because school is not just for teaching the textbooks and history, geography, polity, etc. School is for inculcating some values, and that value education was inherent part, or was inseparable part of our school curriculum.
yes,
We got best teachers available, we got best curriculum available, and we were trained to self study. We were, of course, we had a great teachers, and we had a very great experience with those people, but still they made us self dependent for studies, and we were not spoon fed. Even if we were participating in some activities such as elocution competition or debate competitions, we were supposed to take out the notes, we were supposed to prepare them, and then we were supposed to take them to the teachers for any kind of improvement. No ready-made material for was provided to us, and that made us so self-dependent in terms of studies. And then next is, I can say, teachers were not just the teachers, they were our parents. They took care of the students right from the beginning of day to end of the day.
right,
And even when we were sleeping, they were having eyes on us, they were taking care of us, and
yes,
that built a very strong sense of relationship between teachers and students. That was not a kind of relationship between a vendor and client.
right,
So that's why we are in touch with our teachers today also. We are, even if they are transferred to any other state, any other region, we are in touch always. We are always in touch. That is another point. And third thing, Navodaya gave me a best friends of my life. Navodaya friend circle is still intact, and they are in touch, in constant touch with me, and that is the best thing of best thing or best part of my life. That, and it is also another sentence you must have heard, that if you are a friend, or if you remain as friends for 7 years,
yes, yes,
you remain as friends for lifetime. And even that is a true story about Navodaya students. That Navodaya curriculum is for 7 years, and if we live together in Navodaya for 7 years, we will become friends for lifetime, and
lifetime,
that is
right.
true. So Navodaya is I mean, I owe so much to Navodaya. So I can't even narrate in few words. That entire day will be insufficient to narrate it.
Yes, sir, yes.
So it has a great role. It has a great role in my life.
Sir, you talked about, just I want to ask one thing. You talked about self sufficiency or self dependence in study. So, what is the importance of this in civil services? Because date in our day-to-day life as a teacher of civil services, a student ask, "Sir, is it necessary to take notes? Sir, is it necessary to prepare the notes of NCRTs? Sir, is it necessary to prepare notes of newspapers?" And what we experience in our day-to-day life, students are not used to do that much of hard work. Students want ready-made material. Students need spoon feeding. So, what suggestion you would like to give to the UPSC aspirants who are appearing for the next attempt?
There was no internet revolution in true sense before 3 to 4 years. And earlier in 2012, 2013, I was seeing my senior studying, and at that time I had noticed that no internet classes or no YouTube videos were available to the extent that are available today.
Yes.
So at that time, people were preparing their notes on their own. But if you see today, you will get any kind of lecture, any kind of video, any kind of material online on a single click. So material has been available to the students in a great quantity. But that is studying has been possible. Studying to study for UPSC examinations has become so easy, but to clear the examination has become difficult. So
Yes.
I'll explain this. I'll explain this in this way, that even if you get some videos, even if you get some good lectures on internet, it is not necessarily going to help you unless you study on your own. Because when you are not studying or you are not preparing your notes, you will always tend to forget those things which you have heard once. So I think the the most important part of this curriculum of UPSC preparation is you should revise the things again and again. And I think even it is very difficult to implement this, but I think uh, 3 times revision is necessary. I'll explain how. If you study for 10 hours a day, you should study only for 8 hours, and 2 hours should be spared for revision. So that is daily revision. If you are studying for 6 hours, study for 5 years and spare 1 hour for revision for the entire day. So that is daily revision. In the same way, at the end of week, study for 6 days and revise for 1 day. So that is the weekly revision. And at the end of month, study for 28 days and revise for 2 days.
Right.
So that is monthly revision. And if you go with this kind of very strict timetable, it is very difficult to follow. I have tried, but it is very difficult to follow. It seems to be simple, but simple things are not necessarily easy. And that's why I say that if you try to implement this, you can revise the things in a much better manner. And if you don't revise the things, usually the studies are useless, because there is a graph of forgetfulness, that if you read today and if you don't revise in, and on fifth day if you try to recall, you will find that 80% of what you had read
Right.
will have been lost. But if you revise once, then 60% of the material you will be able to recollect. And if you revise twice, that proportion will go on increasing. So number of revisions are necessary. This is first mantra. You have to study on your own and you have to revise the thing.
Right.
And the second thing is, hard work has no alternative. Hard work uh, doesn't even measure. Hard work has to be a part of your lifestyle, your way of life.
Right. Right.
So we can overcome anything. And consistency, the third most important point, consistency. And
Consistency.
consistency, don't look at me for consistency, because 6 years consistency is not required. six
Yes.
years consistency is not at all required. You need consistency for entire 1 year, one calendar year. So usually students do study for prelims, but after prelims they waste 1 month till the results. Then they prepare for mains examination, and till interview they do not do anything. And once the results are out, then they start for preparing for interview. So this kind of wastage of time has to be prohibited. It has to be minimized, and one has to have consistency for one continuous calendar year. That will be sufficient, in my opinion.
So very beautifully explained by you the importance of revision and importance of consistency. You explained very beautifully the importance of note making and hard work. Sir, moving to next session, next question. Sir, please tell us about your preparation strategy for prelims. How was your strategy for prelims, and what exactly the thought process is needed for exams like UPSC prelims, which is multiple choice objective questions are asked in that exam.
Okay. Uh, I think the strategy has to be always personalized strategy. I cannot give you a kind of Ramban or a kind of booty which can solve all your problems or anyone's problems. So for prelims, one has to find out the strengths, weaknesses. That is what we call as SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunities. So what we have to do is we have to find out our weaknesses. Not even if not strengths, at least we should be able to point out our weaknesses. That this area is weak, and I have to focus on this area to a little bit greater extent. So that we have to keep in mind. Second thing, I will say that in last few years, at least in 2 to 3 years, the pattern of prelims has changed. Pattern of prelims changed, not officially or not in demonstrable manner, but the kind of questions being asked in the prelims examinations has changed. you cannot rely on the factual data. You cannot rely on some material, some books, that if I read this book, I'll be completely uh, thorough with this subject. So there is no any material now. So earlier there was some kind of relief over there. Suppose, for example, polity, Lakshmikant. If you read Lakshmikant, you can attempt any kind of question on polity. That was a kind of scenario few years back, but today that is not the scene. Today you have to be a bit careful, and you have to be a bit, I think, a bit more aware, more logical while answering the questions. And you may not be able to find the answer in any book, but a simple logic, some tricks can help you to get through the question and reach the answer.
Right.
So for prelims in recent years, what you need is uh, practice of solving more and more multiple choice type questions, because solving multiple choice questions is an art altogether. So what you have to focus on is you have to practice more and more MCQs, and you have to try to reach to the answer rather than knowing the things. You need to reach to the answer. So out of four options, you have to reach to the most logical answer,
Right.
which has more chances of being correct. So that is needed in today's scenario, because you cannot know everything. You cannot retain everything, whatever you read. What you have to do is you have to apply your logic, apply some tricks. There are some beautiful videos on YouTube available, which will give you some idea to reach at an answer logically. And these are logical guesses, not arbitrary guesses. Okay. So logical guesses can help you to reach to the answer. Although they are not always successful, but the chances of getting wrong are reduced in that case.
Okay.
And second thing, what I say is you have to keep your reading material compact. You should not read more than some more than standard textbooks, which are told by some seniors or rank holders. So you should not go beyond that list. Even if you read one book for history, that will be sufficient. What you need is revision. You need recurrent revisions and more number of multiple choice questions rather than reading more number of books. If you read Bipin Chandra for history, that is sufficient. If you read Spectrum for history, that is more than sufficient. So you don't need to read both these books simultaneously. For polity, Lakshmikant is sufficient. If you read Lakshmikant, read only Lakshmikant. If you read D.D. Basu, read only D.D. Basu. You don't need to read two books simultaneously for one subject. What you need is keep revising and keep solving multiple choice questions. So that is necessary for prelims. And as I said, you have to solve more papers,
Yes.
question
Yes.
papers. So at least 30 to 35 question papers should be solved. At least I'm saying you can go more than that also, but 35 question papers have to be solved before your
Before exam.
prelims.
Yes.
And other than practicing multiple choice questions, so what you
Yes.
practice daily on daily basis, 50 questions a day, 20 questions a day, as per your capacity, as per your priority. But other than this, you have to solve 35 question papers. So that is, I think, necessary for prelims.
Sir, I would like to summarize what I'm trying to understand from your guidance. First of all, you told us about reading the standard reference books, minimum number of books, and maximum time revision. And then a student or candidate should solve maximum number of questions in his daily routine. And after getting a right amount of expertise in MCQs, he should solve at least 30 to 35 papers 1 month before exam.
Yes.
So it is I
I'm not saying 1 month before exam. That
okay.
should be a part of your curriculums from 6 months before exam. So you
Okay.
should not solve daily question paper in the last month. That binge watching is common for web series and all, but binge reading or binge solving of question papers will not help. So
Okay.
you should solve these papers on weekly basis. So at least 6 months prior to exam, you should start solving question papers, irrespective of your level of preparation. So
Yes.
even if you say that this is first day of my prelims preparation, doesn't matter. You should try to solve the paper. You'll get a direction. In this direction, I have to prepare. So that
Yes,
is also an outcome of solving question paper.
because this doubt is in the mind of many of the aspirants, and they think that we will study for whole entire year, and we will start preparing, or we will start giving test in the last month. So
So that is not useful.
yes, sir. So thank you very much for clearing this doubt, sir. We will move ahead in our discussion. Sir, what is the exact thought process needed for mains exam? Mains exam tests the subjective knowledge of a candidate. So
Yes.
what exact thought process should be there?
You correctly pointed it out that subjectivity is there in mains answers, or it is different from multiple choice questions, and you have to know the things to write in the paper. And this is truly the exam of your thought process, how you look at a problem, how you look at a question. So in this, you need to have some, of course, some logical, rational thought process. At the same time, you need to have some factual knowledge also to support your arguments. So just to make an argument is not sufficient. We should make right to health as a fundamental right. So it is very easy to make a statement, but you should have a factual data. Are we ready uh, to make this as a right to a fundamental right, like right to education, or what is needed to be done to make right to health as a fundamental right? So to supplement this argument, you need some factual data, factual in the sense some data to support your argument. So I think for mains preparation, I think UPSC preparation is nothing but mains preparation. So even if you think of prelims, I can assure you, if you start preparing for mains right from the day one, and you just focus on the things necessary for prelims, and you note them down separately for prelims, then also you will be at no risk. So I think UPSC preparation is nothing but mains preparation. You have to prepare, you have to focus on mains, and you have to give maximum time to mains preparation. So in time allocation, if you say prelims preparation के लिए कितना time देना है, mains preparation के लिए कितना time देना है, of course you have to divide accordingly. And of course prelim is necessary to crack, but prelims preparation is we can rely on mains reading for prelims. But if you prepare for multiple choice questions only, and if you try to attempt the mains questions, you'll not be able to solve those questions. So allocation of time in fair manner is necessary for mains. Second thing, you have to have some factual knowledge also to support your argument.
Yes.
Okay. And even if, suppose another question, if I ask you, what is your opinion on demand of reservation by dominant castes of India? So, for example, Marathas are demanding reservation
Jat,
in Maharashtra, so
Jat
they have been
Arakshan.
given.
Yes.
Jats, Kapus, Patels, they are
Yes.
all are demanding the reservation, and all are dominant castes of those regions. So, what is your opinion if this question is asked, or we have to revise the policy of reservation uh, in the light of the recent agitations by dominant castes in different states? So, examine this statement or comment on this statement. These kind of questions can be asked. But while answering this question, you have to provide some factual things, such as there are some Supreme Court statements uh, regarding reservation. I think there is some question.
Sir, we will take these questions after our discussion. The question answer session
Okay,
will
no
be
problem.
last. Yes.
Okay, no problem. So at that time, you will have to give socio-economic data of these dominant castes. To what extent these castes have been able to develop themselves? What is their economic status? What is their representation in government jobs? What is their representation in private sector jobs? And if you have these kind of factual figures, statistical figures with you, you will be able to put forth your arguments more firmly. So this is another thing. And this is about thought process, or this is about the basics or simple things which you need to know. And the third thing which is necessary to clear the mains examination is you need more and more writing practice for mains.
Yes.
So even if you know the answer, it is very difficult task. Whatever you know, it is very difficult to put it in 150 or 120, 130 words in 7 minutes. So that is very daunting task. That is very difficult, and you'll get to know once you start writing.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you ask me about anything, suppose in suppose 1857 revolt, I can explain it for 2 hours. But if you are asked a question, you have to answer it in 7 minutes. So that is very difficult challenge which you have to overcome, and that you have to practice. And that will be possible only when you write more and more number of questions. You will write more and more number of question papers. So same for as for prelims, I said you have to solve the question papers. For mains also, you have to solve the question papers. You have to write more and more answers. So you can write 5 daily answers, or you can write 2 daily answers, and in once a week you have to write one question paper. And during mains preparation, I think the question, I will address that question here only,
Hmm.
that do we need to write the papers during mains preparation? Yes, you need to write the papers, and you have to be in touch. And for this mains preparation, there has to be binge writing. For example, before mains examination, 2 weeks before mains examination, you must have a practice session of total exam. You have to practice writing 2 question papers in a day for 3 consecutive days. So on first day you have to write essay. That is, I am not counting that day. You have to write only essay. Then on second day, paper one, paper two. On third day, paper three, paper four. And on fourth day, optional one, optional two. So you have to practice it at least once before your mains examination. That will give you a sense of burden which you will have to carry while mains examination will be there, and you'll be prepared for that, because you'll get exhausted while writing the question paper. You'll get exhausted and you'll feel very tired to write the second paper, and you have to be aware of it before your examination. So for that, you have to have a practice of your entire examination as such before you appear for me.
Sir, you have pointed the importance of proper time allotment and proper time management. That means a candidate must give proper time allotment to prelims preparation and mains preparation. And it is very important, sir, because many of the students think that firstly I will prepare for prelims, firstly I will be ready for prelims, and when I get result of prelims, when I clear it, then I will start preparing for mains. So this is a great mistake done by many of the candidates. So it is very important, sir. So would you suggest
Yes.
the preparation prelims come main basis from the beginning? Yes, yes.
Unfortunately, I came to know this, or I realized this mistake very late. But I'll tell you, while you are starting your preparation, when you are starting your preparation, start to read that chapter as if you are reading it for mains. So suppose if you read the constitutional developments, or if you read the chapters on citizenship, fundamental rights, the DPSPs, try to figure out what kind of questions can be framed in mains examinations on this topic. So, so that will be mains preparation. And while you are reading it for prelims, simultaneously you will be preparing for mains also. And when you are reading the newspaper, try to figure out where I can use this point in my mains preparation. And at the same time, just note down the factual thing. Suppose if there is any climate change meet, or if there is any meet regarding vulnerable or critically endangered species, whatever, and if it is happening in some city, some nation, you try to note it down in your separate book. So simultaneously you have to prepare for prelims as well as mains. And about time allocation, there is no stricter division of time. This is for prelims time, this is for mains time, because I think study has to be combined, and it depends on individual to individual. Some individuals are very good at thinking. They can do a great, they can bring forth so great thoughts. So they don't face any problem in writing the answers, but they lack in factual data to support the arguments. So they have to spend more time on collection of those factual figures. statistical figures or some particular names of scientists or thinkers or institutions or uh, Supreme Court judgments, whatever. So they have to focus more time on that. Some students are very good at factual data. They know they can score 120, 140, 160 marks in prelims, but they are not good at writing answers. So they have to focus more on mains kind of preparation. They have to write more answers and they have to focus on that their weaker area. So time allotment, of course, has to be personalized, but simultaneously you have to focus on both the things.
Yes, yes, sir. Sir, in the mains exam, one student has asked about optional, but we will come to that later on. In the mains exam, there is fear about ethics paper in many of the students. And as well as many students, if we see the score of the selected candidates, many students they score very means good marks in ethics paper. So there are two things. A few people they fear about the ethics paper, and on the other side, the toppers or the selected candidates they scored good marks in ethics. So what should be the strategy to for preparation of ethics paper?
Okay. Actually, this is also very subjective because uh, I'll tell you my own story. I am not at all very fond of writing ethics answers, and I am a bit afraid of ethics paper.
Okay,
But I think in my first attempt, when I appeared for interview, in my first interview, before my first interview, when I had appeared for mains, I had written uh, very simple answers, and I had written to the point and simple answers, and I was not indulged in using some kind of jargons or very difficult language and all, and I got very good marks. I think I had 95 somewhere. Very good in the sense considering that time,
that
considering
time.
that
Yes.
result. So, and next year when I appeared for second interview, and in that means I had written uh, uh, very difficult jargons, or I had written it in a technical language. I had tried to utilize more and more technical words or terminology related to ethics, and I tried to make that paper something different. But it costed very heavily to me, and I got only 75 marks in that interview.
Oh,
Sorry, in that ethics paper.
okay.
So, uh, so when I realized, when I tried to analyze my problems in that paper, I thought that I came to conclusion that I had tried to include unnecessarily difficult words or language and some jargons and all, and that had costed me probably. Of course, I can say probably only. So I think ethics needs very simple language. Ethics needs real life examples, and ethics needs very honest answers. They need very honest answers. They don't need idealistic solutions. They don't need some philosophical answers. They don't need some filmy dialogues. They need very pragmatic, realistic, honest answers, and that is very easy. That is the best paper to prepare for, because that doesn't need any kind of specialized knowledge, any kind of deep knowledge of philosophy or any other subject, and you have to be just honest. You have to have good qualities. You can write the paper. Now this is very easy to say, but what to do in actual paper? Suppose if there is a question, suppose I'll just consider one case, one question, and explain that. Suppose there is a question, like a case study. If there is a developmental project in a tribal area, and for that, a water body in the tribal area is going to get affected, on which a large section of tribal population is dependent, and if that developmental project is built there, the water body can get polluted and it can affect the health of those tribal people, and you get to know this. And once you get to know this, what options are available to you, and what will be your final course of action? This is a very typical question. What options are available to you, and what final course you will take? This is very typical and very common question. So for this question, usually students write there are four options available. Either I will quit the job, I will take sick leave till the project is completed, I will blow the whistle and I will inform the journalists and police, or I will consult the seniors, I will put forth my point, and then so these are various options available, and I will go for the final option, and that is the answer. But I think here you don't need to give the first three solutions if you are not going to have any kind of involvement in those kind of solutions. Then why to put forth these? So try to find out the final course of action in the beginning, and divide it in 2 to 3 parts. And what are the options available? They have asked what are the options available. They have not asked how many options are available or what are the minimum 5 options available to you. They have not asked it. You can say only one option will be available to me. I will consult my seniors. I will try to pursue them. I will try to put forth all the statistical data and all the factual things, and I will try to convince them that project is going to be dangerous for tribals. That single option is also available, and that can be the complete answer. Why to write all the unnecessary options available? And negative points. So I don't think those things are necessary. And if you want to add some more options, if you are afraid of writing only one option available, then write down some logical options which can be implemented. So considering the seniors is one option. If they are not convinced, then try to convince the super seniors that the project is going to be harmful. Try to always there will be someone in the hierarchy who will listen, who will be very concerned about the vulnerables, and he will listen to your complaint. So in that manner, probably I'm not able, or I'm not able to draw the correct map of this answer. I'm just trying to give you a kind of direction in which you
Yes.
should try to think. So in this way, you have to attend the questions. You don't need bigger answers, even if it is for 25 marks or 30 marks, a single case study. You don't need to write the answers in 5 pages, 6 pages. Your maximum word limit has been defined, not the minimum word limit. So if you are asked the answer in maximum 250 words, you can write the answer in 200 words also. Upper limit has been given to you, not the lower limit. If you are able to finish the answer in 180 words or 190 words and you are sufficiently convincing the examiner, that will be totally okay. You don't need to write the answer in 250 words accurately, or and even you should not cross the 250 word limit at all. Otherwise it will hamper your speed of writing, it will hamper your time management. So that's why I'll try to summarize. Try to write the small answer, but crisp and complete answers. And try to be logical. Try to be honest. Try to be simple in your language while writing the ethics answers.
As a medical practitioner, I would like to ask you one question about crisis of conscience, or these kind of questions are asked many times in UPSC. What do you understand by means crisis of conscience? What do you understand by moral conflict, ethical conflict? So please enlighten our students. What exactly is crisis of conscience? And as a medical practitioner, did you face any kind of crisis of conscience during your service? And if yes, then how did you overcome that situation?
Okay. This is a very actually uncommon phenomenon, or that is in discussions or in studies, that crisis of conscience. I'll just explain what is crisis of conscience. We have to know some related terms also. What is ethical dilemma? Ethical conflict, it is also called as. So ethical dilemma is, first of all, I'll explain what is ethical dilemma. You have two valid propositions and there is conflict between the two. So that is ethical dilemma. So two options are available to you. Both are correct, but they are against each other. So that is ethical dilemma. And if you come to crisis of conscience, the ethical dilemma is before you act, you are in trouble. What to do?
Okay.
So that is ethical dilemma. And when you do something, and then you realize and you face this problem, that you start feeling guilty, that and you become afraid that I have done something wrong. So that is crisis of conscience.
Okay.
So your inner mind, your inner thoughts say that you have done something wrong and you become afraid. So that is crisis of conscience. And crisis of conscience is problematic because it hampers our decision making in future also. Suppose I'll tell you, I don't know whether it can fit exactly to this problem, but what happened? Usually, this is a case study for every part of lecture on ethics, for every part of discussion on ethical dilemma. That if a poor lady comes to you and she has no any ration card, she has no any address proof, and she needs the food grain, she needs something to eat, and you are the PDS shop owner, and you are running a PDS shop, and can you give the food grains under Antyodaya Anna Yojana to that old woman if she is not having any valid documents? So this is an ethical dilemma. But exactly the same situation had happened to me when I had started to work in Sassoon Hospital, and on day 2 or day 3 of my joining, when early morning I was at Sassoon Hospital at 8 o'clock, and at 8:15 an old lady came to me, and she had no money to get her X-ray and ECG done. She had been advised by the physician to get her X-ray and ECG done, and she was having only 20 rupees, and the fees was now about 80 rupees. X-ray ECG, it was about 80 rupees. So I said that I don't have you have to show me the documents, then only I can make your paper free. If you are eligible to get the BPL benefits, below poverty line benefits, you have to provide me some income proof or ration card. And that was my third day of duty, second or third day of duty, and that was I was supposed to go strictly according to the rules. So what if I don't have any ration card and all? So I had read for ethics paper, and I had read for this preparation, UPSC preparation, many times, that this kind of dilemma can come in front of you. But I was a bit worried because I was very new to that setup. I had worked earlier in some different location at primary health center, and I was aware of whatever is happening in PHC or what to do in such situations. So I said, you wait for our superintendent to come, and once he comes, he may give you without any documents. He may make your paper free, but you have to wait for sir to come. And she went. She waited for 10 to 15 minutes. So our superintendent sir had to go for some meeting due to Corona pandemic, and he was at Dean's office somewhere, and he was very busy, and he came so late. And till then, the woman had left. And when my colleague came to me at 9 o'clock, he joined me at 9 o'clock. His duty started at that time, and I discussed this point with him, and he said that even you had the authority to make her paper free, even if she had no documents, and if you were convinced that she needs the help, so you had that authority. So then I went to search for that woman, and I went to OPD, I went to the gates, and I tried to find out that woman, and I was not able to find out her. So then that entire day I was a bit in a kind of a guilty situation. I could help her, but I did not, just because of my lack of knowledge. And that day was a very bad day for me, and that was probably I think crisis of conscience for me.
Yes.
But fortunately, on the next day itself, the woman came once again, but again she had no documents, and I was able to help her. So fortunately, that problem was solved very easily for me. So, but in many cases, in many other cases, it is not so easy. Crisis of conscience is a situation where uh, officers have to be worried for days, months. So, so it is very difficult situation. Actually, it is very difficult situation to come out of that. And but on the other side, I will say that this is a very good thing. If you go through this crisis of conscience, then you will get a confirmation that you are an honest person. So I think it is a very good thing to have a crisis of conscience, because it makes you aware that you are an honest person. Because crisis of conscience will not be there in dishonest officers or in less compassionate officers. Whatever wrongs they will have done, they will consider that they have done a great thing and they will forget about it. So if you are having crisis of conscience, congrats.
Yes.
You will come out of it. There are ways to come out of it, but that will stamp you with the quality of honesty. So that is my opinion about crisis of conscience.
Sir, it was a great example, and there is a lot to learn from your real life experience. And I ask you this question because I want my student to be ethically and morally upright after getting into services. And they should know in advance, means what kind of challenges are there and what kind of ethical and moral conflicts will be there after getting into services. So rather only means not only preparing and not only getting selected, but my student should be ethically and morally upright. So this was my expectation, and that's why I asked you this question. And you guided in a very beautiful manner, and there is lot to learn from this example, sir. Uh,
Thank
so
you. Thank you.
so we will proceed further, sir. Optional paper is very important. It is very means critical, or it is very important aspect of the mains exam, because it carries about 500 marks. So what was your optional, and what was your strategy for your optional, and how did you ensure getting maximum marks in your optional paper?
My optional paper was anthropology, optional subject, and anthropology was also a very accidental thing to happen with me. Even before starting preparation for anthropology or UPSC preparation, I was not knowing anything about anthropology, and I used to think that anthropology consists of study of fossils, Homo erectus, Homo sapien, and that's all. Anthropology is all about those fossils only. But when I started to prepare for anthropology, anthropology was altogether different. So fossil study is a very small part of anthropology. Anthropology is complete study of human being, and that's why anthropology impressed me a lot. So in one part of study you are studying fossils, in one part of subject you are studying genetics, in another part of subject you are studying marriage and family, in next part you are studying about archaeology, in another part you are studying about uh, the, the primatology. So it is a very diverse, very dynamic subject, and in a very infant stage of development. Anthropology has not been a developed in the sense uh, its its stage is still infant stage. So lot more is yet to happen in anthropology. So political science or public administration, these are very old subjects, but geography is old subject, history is old subject, but anthropology is very new subject, and it came in universities just 100 to 125 years back. So it's a very interesting subject. And before selecting any optional, I'll just tell very important thing to new aspirants, that you should select the optional paper only on the basis of your interest. So which subject is scoring, which subject is in trend, which subject is giving you the guidance, or which guidance is available to you. So these are not the criteria for selecting optional. You have to select optional as per your interest, and it is very important task for you to find out your interest. Start preparing for prelims, you will come to know whether your interest is in geography, whether your interest is in society, your interest in history, polity. You will be able to find out yourself comfortable in some of these regions, and try to pick up the optional from those areas only. Try to find out more about that subject, and ask yourself whether you will be comfortable with this subject for entire year, or sometimes 2 years, in rare cases 3 years, rarest of the rare cases 6 years. You have to be with that subject. So uh, you have to have interest in that subject. This is very important, and that should be the only criteria for selection of your option. Another thing you can consider for selection of optional, that is your graduation. If you are a graduate of engineering, you can opt for engineering as your optional, because you are well versed. You have spent 4 years with that subject. If you are a doctor, then you can go for medical science as your optional, because you have spent 5.5 years with your subject. So you will be well versed with that subject. So graduation and interest. These are the two basic criteria, and these should be the only criteria for selection of optional. Okay, because trend of marks or guidance available, all these can change anytime, any moment. Your interest is very difficult to manipulate. So this is one thing. Second thing, preparation for optional. It varies from optional to optional. Anthropology needs reading and understanding the things. You need blend of both. You have to read more and more things, and you have to understand the things also. So some subjects need conceptual understanding. Some subjects need factual data or factual things to remember. Anthropology needs both. So anthropology, if you are able to understand the concepts, you are able to recall and reproduce them on the paper also. So anthropology preparation is a that can be a topic of another discussion. We can make another video or another meet on that. But for now, I'll just say that anthropology needs both, yeah, conceptual understanding as well as objective things. And uh, of course, it is necessary for any optional that you need to write more and more papers. So at least 15 or 14 papers, 7 of paper 1, 7 of paper 2. At least 15 papers or 14 papers are necessary before you appear for your mains.
Sir, one student is asking about the ideal time for covering entire syllabus. So, what do you think the ideal time to give a complete justice to entire syllabus?
No, I think it is very subjective and it has to be answered individually. So every individual is of different ability, different attitude, and different aptitude and different interests. So ideal time we cannot tell because it differs from individual to individual. But of course, theoretically, I can say 1 year is necessary for clearing entire examination. If you start preparing sincerely and if you have basic knowledge, I'm not saying specialized knowledge or you must have read some books and all. But if you are having some basic knowledge, even 1 year can be sufficient. But that is a theoretical answer. That is not a practical answer at all. You may need, or 99% you need more time, and it varies from 1.5 year to 2 years to 6 years also. So it varies, and we cannot tell pinpoint this much time is necessary for entire syllabus. No, we cannot say. We can't tell, and that will be a very wrong to answer this question.
Yes, yes.
One should not answer this question altogether.
Actually, you are means guiding us in a very honest manner and a very transparent manner, because people gets confused, and especially students, means because lot of things are going on in the market, and a lot of thing people say that in 1 year or in 6 months or in 3 months, and there is trend, I think trend with the crash course of 1 month, crash course of 3 months. This kind of thing usually misguide the students, and it's I'm very thankful to you because you are
Crash courses.
explain. Yes.
I'll just add one sentence. Crash courses will only crash you.
Yes.
Only if you are prepared, well versed with the subject, then only crash course will have some significance. Otherwise, crash courses are for freshers. Crash courses will be useless totally. So don't go for crash courses if you are totally new to that thing. When you have read everything, when you think that you are well versed with everything, yet you need revision and you need 1 month for revision. And if there is crash course for 15 days, you can join that crash course and get your revision done within 15 days
Yes.
by paying some fees. So that is the only utility of crash course, nothing more than that.
Yes, sir. Of course, sir. Switching to our next phase, that is interview. So, what was the experience of your interview? Means what kind of questions, and sir, please tell us about your experience in interview.
I think interview is the best part of UPSC journey. So fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, but I was able to appear for interview thrice. So I experienced it 3 times, and I think interview is the best day of your entire year because first thing I'll tell you, interview is a very mm, wrong word here. Interview is actually personality test. in
Yes.
UPSC's language or in UPSC's notification, that is personality test. Interview can be technical, that can take place on telephone also. So, but personality test has to be face to face. And even in the Corona pandemic, UPSC insisted for face to face talk rather than online interviews. So they called us, they gave us face shields, masks. They panel members were also wearing face shields and masks, and that was the first kind of the first of its kind in the
Yes.
entire history of UPSC that we appeared for that interview in face shield and mask. That will be the first instance in the UPSC's entire tenure. So that was a very good experience, and that is a very good experience in everybody's case, because panelists are very cordial to you as if you are their guest. And actually you are their guest, because you have rightfully claimed the seat of being there, and you are rightfully appearing for interview, and it is their duty to conduct your interview and examine you. So they treat you very cordially, and they treat you as if you are their guest. You are very important for them also. So they don't see you, they don't look at you as you are a fresher or you are very immature, you are amateur. So they will not look at you in through that lens. They will try to find out some gem out of you. Even if you are digressing, if you are distracting from your answer, they will bring you on the track,
Okay.
and they will uh, try to take out whatever is necessary on whatever you can give. So interview is a reflection of your personality. Interview marks is a reflection of your personality in maximum number of cases. Sometimes interview may go wrong on the spot. Some blunder may happen without any intentions, and your interview score may come down. But usually, it's a true reflection of your personality. And my interview, if you consider, it was a very good experience. Last two interviews I could not score, but this year I think I had given a, and because I'll tell you why I could not succeed in last two interviews, because I was not original at all. I was very mechanized in those interviews, and I think this time what I had decided, that I will be always transparent, honest, and simple, as if I am going there, not an UPSC aspirant or not someone who has cleared means. No, I will answer in a manner as if I am answering to you. So that will be the simplicity I'll keep in mind, and I'll be very honest. I will not bring any kind of external strength to me, and I'll just go and sit there and I will answer the answers honestly. So they asked me about almost all the questions were based on health only. As I was a doctor and I had a work experience, then they had asked me so many questions on health. What are the lacunae in our health policy? What are the measures to correct them? What are the health problems of India? What will you do if you are made health secretary to correct our or to achieve our sustainable development goals related to health? Then what is your opinion about facilities available in government hospitals today? Because government hospitals are blamed for their quality of services and all. Then they asked me about some questions on Jammu Kashmir, Article 370, Article 35A, some questions on Swachh Bharat, some questions on improvements of Swachh Bharat over Nirmal Bharat, or some questions related to what are the limitations or what are the problems with Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Then almost everything was, except Article 35A and Article 370, every question was somehow related to health or cleanliness. And why do you want to become a civil servant even after being a doctor, qualified MBBS doctor? We are having deficit of doctors, and why do you want to join the services? Actually, this is a very peculiar question asked to engineers and doctors, especially IITians or some students who have done their post graduation in engineering. So it is very peculiar question, and I was expecting this question, and I honestly answered that I tried for getting a job in the Maharashtra government as a medical officer on permanent basis, but I could not get in last 4 years. And I'm also trying for combined medical services.
Okay.
And if I don't get succeeded, I think this civil services is the best option among the government jobs, because of the security, the kind of prestige we get, and the kind of work we get. I think civil services is the best option among the all government jobs, and that's why I want to go for this job. So no subsequent question was asked to this. Otherwise, they used to grill the students. कि बाबा, I will use these qualities of MBBS curriculum in services, other services also. They will ask you, what will you do if you get account services? How will you use the knowledge of medical
Medical
science there?
science.
What will you do if you get the postal services? So I think honesty is necessary, and I think I was able to tackle those questions sufficiently. Satisfying answers were given by me, and I don't know. Of course, I am thinking right now in that manner, but I don't know the interview score. That will come out within 2 to 3 days. Let us
Yes,
see.
yes, sir. Sir, in the syllabus of the personality test, if we read the notification, if we go through the notification and the guidelines for interview or personality test section, the UPSC has clearly mentioned the importance of developing common sense, presence of mind, and such kind of qualities are tested in the interview. Sir, any this kind of
Yes.
experience you got in your interview? Any kind of question
Actually, not
or incidents in your interview?
actually. In the beginning itself, when they had asked me about this, there was one subsequent question, but that was a bit. I think that was a bit trap, a kind of trap. When I answered that, when I was working as a medical officer at that time, I thought that this can also be a very good option as a government job. I was preparing for combined medical services also. I was applying for permanent seat in government job in Maharashtra as a medical officer. But at that time, I came in contact with Tahsildar of my region, my taluka, then chief officer of the municipal corporation, nearby municipal corporation, and they were of my age, and that's why I was motivated to prepare for civil services. When I answered this, then immediately one member asked me, "Was that the only thing which motivated you?" I
Oh,
said, "Yes, ma'am." Uh, don't you think there is a kind of power available for civil servants? There is a kind of aura behind the civil servants. They get a different kind of treatment in society. So, was it not a factor which motivated you? And I think that was a very dangerous trap. So I said, yes, ma'am. Uh, the officers do get power. There is an aura, but I don't think I'm impressed or motivated by those factors. I can say prestige motivated me a bit because there is a huge prestige to civil servants, but I don't think I'm motivated by power or aura. I have always tried for a government job, and that's the only motivation for me that this is the best kind of government job which will provide me a wider platform to work on or diverse fields to work in. So that's the only motivation for me. So in that manner, I answered, and then it was stopped. So if at all, I would have said even a bit of thing to support that. Yes, I want to go in civil services because we have huge power, and I will be able to use that power for development of people and all. Then that would have convinced them that I will manipulate myself according to their will. So that kind of traps they you always try to set, and if you get into that trap, then they get to know that we are able to manipulate this person very easy. He can say yes to anything we say. So these kind of traps are used by them.
so it
That was
was
only one experience I am able to recall,
okay.
and I don't know whether they had used anywhere else, but I am able to pinpoint this one.
Sir, we will shift to the next session, that is question answer or queries section. So I would request the students who are present here, if they have any kind of personal doubt or if they want to ask anything to Dr. Pradeep Dubal, they can ask.
युपीएससीच्या प्रिपरेशन चालू करताना सुरुवातीला आपण कोणत्या मिस्टेक्स अवॉइड केल्या पाहिजे?
I think I had said earlier also that you should avoid reading huge number of books or buying huge number of books. Usually in the beginning, students are impressed by their colleagues that they have 10 books. I have only 3 books. They have the notes of this class. I don't have those notes, and I should buy. Otherwise, I will lag behind in the journey. I will lag behind him. So this kind of fear has to be discarded right in the beginning. just believe in the book list of any one candidate, any one successful candidate, and follow that book list religiously. No any book list is useless, no any book list is irrelevant given by any successful or experienced candidate. So you just need to follow it religiously. There are 10 ways of reaching a village. So everyone will tell you different roads, but every road will ultimately reach to that particular village. In the same way, there are different books to read from, and if you read only one book, that will be sufficient. You don't need to jump upon from one book to another book. So this is the very grave mistake right in the beginning committed by new aspirants, that they buy large number of books and they buy large number of notes. They start compiling, they start accumulating those notes in the house, and later on they just have to sell it uh, at the rate of 7 rupees, 8 rupees per kg. So that should not happen. Second thing, uh, right from the beginning, start to study in groups. So even if this is called as a competitive exam, I will call it as a cooperative exam. More you cooperate, more you are having chances of getting secured, or more you are having chances of getting selected. So study in group, cooperate with each other. That will help you to secure the rank more earlier. And third thing, because earlier, I mean, in the beginning, we don't get the importance of group studies. But later on and earlier, there is very immature thought process in the minds of students, and that is reality. That if I tell this trick to my friend, he will score more than me and all. So this kind of mentality is there. We can't deny it, and we should avoid these kind of thoughts, because that is taking you nowhere. Okay, so just try to be cooperative, be helpful to others. That will always help you also.
Sir, you have pinpointed very important aspect of the UPSC preparation, that is cooperation. This is not a
Yes.
competitive exam, this is cooperative exam. And most of the time I give the same example to the students, the example of Bodhisattva. So Bodhisattva is the person who help others in getting salvation, and in that process his own salvation he experiences.
Yes.
So the preparation of UPSC is like a bodhisattva. Every candidate should assume himself as a bodhisattva and cooperate others, and
Yes.
do
True.
a cooperative study.
Completely true.
Yes, sir. Sir, you have been serving in the medical sector as a medical professional, and as a responsible citizen, you served people for long years, and now you have cleared the UPSC exam, and you will be getting class 1 post in UPSC exam. So now your real journey will start. Means the real journey lies ahead. So first of all, we would like to thank you that you came to our platform and guided our
Thank you
students.
so much.
And I would like to wish best luck for you for your means future career. मी तुमच्यासाठी एक शेर इथे वाचू इच्छितो आणि तुम्हाला तुमच्या
Irshad, Irshad.
भावी आयुष्यासाठी तुम्हाला म्हणजे बेस्ट लक देण्यासाठी की अर्ज किया है, अब्र रहमत तेरी चौखट पे बरसती नजर आए, अब्र रहमत तेरी चौखट पे बरसती नजर आए, हर लम्हा तेरी तकदीर संवरती नजर आए, बिन मांगे मिले तू जो चाहे, दुआ खुद तेरे हाथों को तरसती नजर आए. सर
Yeah, Bharat. Thank you so much for these kind of words for me, and I'm feeling very overwhelmed for these kind of words and lines for me, and I'm very thankful to you for inviting me to your platform, and I will be very happy to join you if even if you need anything from me, and if it is possible in my own capacity to help you, I'll always be happy to help you.
sure sir,
And
sure sir.
that was a very nice session today, and I was very happy to answer your questions. And thank you so
Yes
much.
sir,
Once
thank you
again,
so
thank you
much
so
sir,
much.
thank you so much. Thank you. Sir, so we are going to end this meeting, and I'm also thankful to the students. They came and they attended the entire lecture. So we respect your valuable time. You have more duties lying ahead throughout the day. So let us end this meeting. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.